Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his wife, Sophie Gregoire Trudeau, say they're separating after 18 years of marriage.
And a reminder that the two have been married, as the Prime Minister pointed out, for 18 years. They have 3 children, and those 3 children are all, of course, Xavier and Ella Grace, as well as Hadrian. And the first child that they had, son Xavier, is 15, Ella Grace is 14, and their final child, Hadrian, is a little bit younger, not quite 10 years old at this point.
The couple have done a good job in terms of keeping the children away from the spotlight. And Canadian media has been extremely respectful of that. We do not usually report on the private lives of our politicians. We care about what they do in terms of policy, and we hold them accountable for that.
But Justin's post, it says, Sophie and I would like to share the fact that after many meaningful and difficult conversations, we have made the decision to separate. As always, we remain a close family with deep love and respect for each other and for everything we have built and will continue to build. For the well-being of our children, we ask that you respect their privacy and their privacy as well. So, of course, this is breaking news, as you mentioned. This is a couple that have been together since 2003. They met when they were co-hosting an event in Montreal. And they've been married for 18 years. So Sophie Gregoire Trudeau, very active during the Prime Minister's time in office, often seen side by side with him. Most recently at Canada Day, she was there, and we can think of the King's coronation as well. So she for sure has been a very active part of his time as Prime Minister. But, you know, this is not the first time a prime minister has announced his separation during his time in office. We can think of his father, now back in 1977. Back then, his father announced that he was separating from Justin Trudeau's mother, Margaret Trudeau. So, but to your point, Sophie Gregoire Trudeau really, in the last few years, has become known in her own right. I mean, she is a social activist. She's an advocate, particularly on issues like mental health. You know, this is news that all Canadians will definitely be paying attention to, because not only is he the Prime Minister, but she's also well known in a lot of circles.
Of course, you can't help but have your mind go forward to how this is going to be used politically, perhaps by the opposition. I don't know. What would you expect in that regard, Kate?
Well, one thing that I noticed in the statement from the Prime Minister is that he's asking for privacy. Whether or not that privacy will be given to him, I mean, I guess we'll see. But it is important to note that the couple do share 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. And the Prime Minister has written in the past and spoken publicly about how his parents' divorce hurt him when he was a child and how public that was. So those are definitely questions that we're going to continue watching.
What happened to Pierre Elliott Trudeau and Margaret Trudeau when they also got divorced? And, you know, that was really a first for a Canadian Prime Minister at the time. Now we see this happening to the current Prime Minister, Pierre Elliott Trudeau's son.
That's right. So there are parallels, Todd. Pierre Elliott Trudeau announced his separation from his then wife, Margaret Trudeau, in a terse 4-line news release in 1977, in which he just said they were going their separate ways, that the Pierre Elliott Trudeau would retain custody of the children, and that Margaret Trudeau was separating, and that she was going to pursue an independent career outside of the Prime Minister's office. What is interesting to point out is that Sophie Gregoire, as you mentioned, also had quite a career before getting married.
I heard this news.
Well, I think like many Canadians, this is a sad situation for both Justin Trudeau and Sophie Trudeau, and for the family. You know, that said, there are a lot of families that go through difficult times and separations like this, so there's probably a certain level of empathy. I think the key thing now, at least in the short term, is for all opposition parties and individuals to allow the family space in order to get through this difficult time. But I think eventually this will turn to, you know, probably in about 2 weeks, people will be wondering, you know, what is the impact on Justin Trudeau? You know, how is he juggling his new family situation with his responsibilities as Prime Minister? And I think that's where the rubber will hit the road, so to speak, as to whether there's any impact outside of the personal impact on this.
Yeah, so tell me about that, because that is your area of expertise, the polling, Nick, trying to get a sense of where Canadians are at on politics, but on a number of different fronts. Your read on the potential implications here, just in terms of, where the Prime Minister has been in the polling lately, his popularity, what can you tell us?
Well, right now in the Nanos tracking, the Liberals are about 6 to 7 points behind the Conservatives. The Conservatives are in minority government territory. It's pretty close on the preferred Prime Minister front between Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre, with Pierre Poilievre having a little bit of a numeric advantage. But I think when it comes to an issue like this, there are probably two dimensions. Canadians are going to want to know, if and how this might impact Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister, because, what Canadians see is a Prime Minister that's dealing with the situation, obviously has to focus on his family. The other thing is, if this is just a situation of two individuals kind of growing apart, then it's really a non-story. And it's basically a personal, private matter between Justin Trudeau and Sophie Gregoire. If there's anything else outside of that, I think that's where, this could become a distraction for the government and a potential risk. But I think the reality now, if this is just a separation because of a situation, then I can't really see any impact, at least in the short term.
Yeah, and you raise a great point, and something we were talking to Judy Trinh about just before we brought you and Nick to the conversation. This sort of idea that Canadians are quite respectful. There isn't this idea that we, in the media certainly, try to go through the private lives of politicians. I think that people understand why we don't necessarily do what they do in the UK or the US or other countries, and that is sort of an understanding. There's sort of this respect here that somebody's personal life is just that. It's personal and it's private. In this case, though, it becomes a little trickier because you're talking about a sitting Prime Minister, who has been the Prime Minister for 8 years and counting, Nick, and could be for the possibility of another 2 as well. Can you talk to us at all about, sort of where Canadians are about, this? Some will no doubt shrug and say, look, many people get separated, many people get divorced, many people who have high-profile, high-stakes jobs find themselves in this situation.
And, I think for a lot of Canadians, they won't be surprised because they know that, just by being Prime Minister, it puts a significant amount of stress just as part of that job, professional stress, but it also puts stress on your family. And you know what? The fact of the matter is that many politicians who work these long hours are dealing with very similar situations where, they're trying to balance their family life and their professional life and their public service. And sometimes something gives. And I think that's what happened in this particular case. I think sadly, when people look at Justin Trudeau's career, the one thing that probably today will highlight is that there's a casualty here in terms of him being Prime Minister, and that first casualty at least being his relationship with Sophie.
All right, let's bring in Judy Trinh, who is in Ottawa following this breaking news. Judy, bring us up to speed on what we know, what's happening right now.
Well, Todd, what we can tell you is that this announcement came over Instagram, as you mentioned. They have been married for 18 years. What is interesting about this marriage was that it put Canada on the map, I guess, in the fashion world and in terms of interest internationally. The New York Times wrote an op-ed about the couple when Prime Minister Trudeau was first elected in 2015 in a majority government. They called it in the op-ed, they said Camelot had come to Canada. And that's because of the youthfulness of the couple and the energy that they brought. One of the first things, the couple has been front and center in terms of the Prime Minister's branding from the beginning when he was elected. You'll remember that in December 2015, just a few months after getting elected, the couple appeared in a Vogue profile in which they talked about their relationship. And at the time, it was considered very sultry and even sexy photo. We had not seen anything like it in Canadian politics. So they represented this brand of Canadian politics that ushered in youth, that ushered in fashion and a sense of sophistication, perhaps, that Canada was not known for.